Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and we're here giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true with New Paradigms for a New World. And we're here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m. That's our special edition of Tell Me Your Story. Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., believe it or not, 9 programs, 9 different guests, 9 different topics, 9 different conversations. I hope that you will connect to. You'll subscribe and click notification when you go to the podcast sites of SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, and YouTube, where you can watch these conversations, and I hope that you will. I hope you'll also find it in your heart to support us financially. We can use all the help we can get. We have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask you to whom are you sending, Richard@richarddugan.com. That's the email address you want to use. Richard@richarddugan.com. And also, during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, we would ask that you spend some time going within and listening to that still small voice. Might help you out, especially in the conversation we're going to have today. We are going to be talking with Denise Mange, and she is the author of a book that I think those of us who are pet lovers would behoove us to get a hold of. It's translating your pet's behavior. Learn what their behavior says about you to train smarter, not harder. Denise, thank you for joining us. And boy, in addition to being a mouthful of a title and subtitle, it could not be more true. I think Cesar Romero used to say, I'm not here to train your dog. I'm here to train you, right?
That's so right. And, dog training and pet guardianship in general has really come a long way in the recent years. Gone are the days of dominance and hierarchical, considerations when it comes to our animal companions. And I think all of us here understand that our animal companions are not only furry, amazing little companions and great company, and they crack us up, but they're also amazing life coaches. As one of the most intimate, honest relationships in our lives, everyday interactions with our animal companions have the power to not only transform us, but teach us a lot about ourselves, about our fears, our desires, our motivations, which kind of helps us get to the next step in our personal development.
Mm. And is this a focus on one particular species, or does this transcend from two different species? Because I'm thinking you can, but you can't train cats. Okay. The old saying about, it's like it's like trying to herd cats, I'm sure my parents felt that way with the 6 of us. Seems to me like this is more geared towards canines. Is that right? And you froze. Oh, great. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You're back. So I heard that you can't train cats. And, this philosophy, what I love about it is it really applies to any animal companion in our life.
Ah.
Whether it's a dog, a cat, a bird, or even, animal companions that have already transitioned, we can still apply these philosophies and principles. And even if you aren't a pet parent, even just animals in the wild, we learned so much from who's showing up, how they're showing up in our lives, and what they make us feel.
Mm-hmm.
So this whole approach, a mindful approach to pet guardianship, is truly about all species. We can learn about so much about ourselves from all of them. And then in this book in particular, the practical training guidance is surrounding dogs, just because I am a dog trainer.
Mm-hmm.
And, the objective of this book was really to bring together the philosophy of personal development through pets with bringing in practical guidance with dog training.
So, am I correct in understanding that the process of quote unquote training a dog is not to get the dog to do what you want, but to understand why the dog is doing what the dog is doing so that you can better, shall we say, connect and or bond to where then the dog sort of begins the process of starting to actually respond and maybe even being intuitively um, doing sort of doing the things that we want them to do, like not barking or not pooping in the house or letting us know they need to go outside or wanting a cookie or, hey, I'm hungry, feed me, those kinds of things.
Absolutely. So, our relationship with our animal companions goes so much deeper. So, this mindful approach to pet training kind of encompasses the notion that in order to shift their behavior, in order to train smarter, not harder, it's not about going through the steps of repetition. It's not about teaching them to sit, teaching them to bark, or teaching them, not to bark. No, stop barking, stop barking. In order to truly transform behavior, we need to understand what motivates it. And if we believe, as so many of us as pet parents do, that our animal companions' energy is enmeshed as ours, they can serve as mirrors. So their behaviors, their motivations, oftentimes are mirroring our own deepest fears, desires. And that provides an insight into ourselves. Because when we're working with our animal companions, due to the depth of our relationship, in order to see changes in their behavior, it's not just about them, it's about us changing our habits, mindsets, and beliefs as well. So, anytime our animal companions are drawing our attention, whether they're barking, maybe they have separation anxiety, maybe our cat's having accidents outside of the litter box, there's always something I can garner more broadly in my life that needs to change. For example, if a dog is barking a lot, right? They might be barking and I might be trying to do, traditional training, but not seeing the shifts I need to until I realize, you know what, let me take a step back. What does this dog's barking remind me of? When I'm asking my dog to stop barking and I don't feel heard, that brings up a very specific pattern and emotion in my life. So, as a pet parent, it behooves me to sit back and say, you know what? Where else in my life do I not feel heard? And it might be at meetings at your job. It might be in a intimate relationship with a partner or family dynamics. And when we start realizing that our pets' behavior is drawing attention to broader habits, mindsets, dynamics, experiences in our lives, then we get to shift not only their behavior, but ours as well.
It sounds an awful lot like animals that we have in our homes are sort of almost an extension of our intuition.
That's a beautiful way to put it. I do feel that our animal companions know us almost better than we know ourselves. And that very much as, we came to this world and we have soul contracts with other humans in our lives, right? People come into our lives specific times for specific lessons. Our animal companions have those same soul contracts with us. So even pet parents listening right now, they might think of different pets in their lives, and maybe a pet they had in adolescence or early adulthood had a very specific role that was very different from the animal companion that they currently have now in a more mature spot in their life or as they're more awakened. So the philosophy, I like to refer it and kind of wrap it up in this little button of self-help for pet's sake, right? Our animal companions know that we're here to grow, we're here to change, we're here to evolve. We're all passionate about our path of transformation and personal development. But if we're not forced to, odds are we just won't take the time to take the steps that we need to. But the second we realize that our behavior, our energy, our mindset is affecting our animal companions' behavior, now I'm all in. I will do whatever it takes to kind of create that shift. A story comes to mind with a woman, and she was, new in her career. She had a managerial role in a very male driven industry. And she was put in charge of a very rowdy group of guys working under her. And she did not feel like she had the leadership skills, the ability, the capability to really kind of wrangle the crew. Interestingly enough, in that same moment of her life, she had a pet who was an Australian Shepherd. And bless his heart, he was so rambunctious on leash, right? And so this experience of walking her dog kind of mirrored the experience that she was having at work, that she didn't feel that she had the leadership, authority, or kind of gravitas to handle the situation, to be in control of it.
Hmm.
As we worked with her on leash, talking about our deep breaths, our body language, our energetic coherence, ensuring that when we were going on walks, we had, very secure energy, very stable energy, what we said we would mean. And we were incredibly intentional in our work on leash with our dogs. She realized that she could have more of a commanding presence. And as her dog became better on leash, she too felt like she had a better handle on her team at work.
Yeah.
So that's just one way that kind of our animal companions almost act as dress rehearsals to help us understand how to manage our own energy, our mindsets, and kind of empower ourselves so we can translate those same skill sets to
Yeah.
other areas and relationships in our lives.
I had a beautiful white husky shepherd mix. Her name was Makushla. She had a little pink nose. And when I would take her for walks, she would pull. I mean, and she'd start having trouble breathing. And I would try to, hey, stop pulling, come back here, come back. Oh, yeah. And I went to a trainer and they gave me one of these metal collars that had the spikes in them underneath only. And the, um, the moment that I put that on her and the trainer told me how to walk her, she walked right beside me. Now, I wasn't yanking on it to get her to behave. There was some, and it was, this is the, and actually the spikes went across the back of the neck, which simulated a mother's discipline with her jaws to puppies. And I experienced that when we got Angus, who is our big black King Shepherd. He's 100 pounds now, but we got him at 8 weeks, and she raised him, and she would do that to him, and that clicked in my head that, oh, so when I'm walking with her, she's staying right with me. She's not racing ahead anymore. And all would have to do is sort of the little flip of the wrist on the leash, and it would do the thing. And and then, and we live on a piece of property that's very large and so forth. I always wanted a dog that would stay with me, that would follow me around. Now I do have right now, I have a chicken that does that to me in the chicken run. But I would take Makushla out into the yard, open yard, not fenced. And she would wander off a little bit, but the moment I would call her, boom, she would come right back. And then she would follow me around, and then she might wander off a little bit, not too far. And then I would call her and she'd come right back. And I thought, now that's the kind of dog I want. Yeah, I mean, that is listening. But what about those experiences where, and I'm not sure exactly what the right word is, the owner of the dog is in upset, is distraught,
Mhm.
and the two are very bonded, very connected. And now the dog is upset too. Um, it seems to me there's not going to be any way to calm the dog down until the owner, the bonded, maybe that's a better way to put it, the bonded one calms down, right?
That's a beautiful scenario to illustrate. So what I consider that, or I've kind of called that, I mentioned that in my book as empathic cycling, right? A lot of times we are so bonded with our animal companions, whether we're having a tough moment in our lives, maybe we had a breakup and a change in our pack, or even as simple as if you're walking your dog on leash in New York City where things are really hectic and your dog's reactive on leash and they get upset. So now I'm stressed. And then my pet picks up on me being stressed. So they're even more stressed and protective of me. And on it goes. There is an opportunity to have that awareness of the empathic cycling,
Mm-hmm.
right? So in the latter scenario where we're on leash and we're trying to really kind of shift the situation, it's on me as the pet parent to kind of create that stability for my pet. And that is such a beautiful skill that they instill in us
Mm.
because me being able to hold that space, hold that calm, it's not about, no, 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 we're fine, we're fine, we're fine. That never works, right? It's about
Mm.
really embodying calm. It's modeling that energy, being that energy we want to see, modeling it for them. it's a beautiful opportunity because the second we realize we broke that empathic cycling, our dog calms down too. And that becomes very real feedback, right? So it reminds you how to kind of call in calm in your body, which is such a valuable skill. And then there's other situations where the stress is very different. The one you brought up with the emotional bonding, right? We're upset, something happened in our lives, we lost a job, we lost a relationship, whatever it may be. We're not feeling our best. Our animal companions are amazing because as much as we're their guardians and we care for them, there are moments where it shifts and they care for us. So
Mm.
it is, in that scenario, it's not always easy for us as pet parents to receive love, to be open and vulnerable to, other people giving us love, giving us that comfort, because love hasn't always been a safe thing. But when it comes to our animal companions, we know we can unconditionally accept it. So
Mm.
in those moments, we can rely on our animal companions to kind of bring that comfort to us. And then also be really mindful, understand that as we're upset, they may be upset as well. So we can kind of shift our mindset, shift our behavior. And this is where understanding the kind of what is going on in our lives, being introspective, really kind of going back to what the theme of is, if, we're talking about a breakup,
Mm.
odds are our animal companion might have some separation anxiety from us as well, right? Because we're dealing with this notion of separation, of splitting up. So if we can take that as an opportunity to really revisit, how do we feel about separation? How do we feel about loss? How do we feel about ourselves in context of relationships? Are we always looking to other humans or even our pets to feel fulfilled and whole? If that's the case, let's look into that. So they give us that opportunity to truly understand what's going on with ourselves. And as we kind of lift up out of that fog, so will they. So they become
Mm.
that really beautiful barometer and litmus test of our growth, of our expansion, of how we're working through it. So the biggest thing I always tell my pet parents in those scenarios is don't feel guilty, right? Because as soon as people understand that philosophy and they buy into like, oh my gosh, my pet is acting this way because of me, or they're mirroring my emotions, that makes me so sad that they're going through this because of me. That's not the case at all.
Mm.
They're mirroring it as part of their job, their work with us, and that we're just going through it together. It's that partnership. And to
Mhm.
me, that's one of the biggest shift when it comes to this new vanguard of pet guardianship is understanding anything going on in my pet's life. It's not me versus them, or it's not happening only to my pet or only to me. We're in mesh, so we get to go through it together. Now, all of a sudden, no one's ever alone in the process, and we get to kind of build off each other's momentum and energy.
Yeah. Denise Mange, my guest, translating your pet's behavior. That's right. You don't need a third person in there to translate if you're like you would with signing or a foreign language. Even though the language of a dog in particular, in this case, is sometimes a little challenging to try to figure out, you can learn what their behavior says about you to train smarter, not harder. I know that one of the things that we finally learned, it took about, I can't even remember how many months it took. It took quite a while, though. We brought into our home after we got Angus, and he was full grown, a purebred female shepherd. He did not like her at all. And we had trainer after trainer after trainer come out to work with her, to work with him, to try to bring them together. Until one day, my wife and I, were out in the backyard and her name was Bridget, and his name being Angus. And I had a hold of Angus because he was a big dog, and I knew my wife she couldn't handle his strength. And we were out there, and he was trying to get at her. So I went and I started to wrap myself around him, and he clamped his mouth on my arm. Now, I didn't bite down, no teeth marks or puncturing. And I didn't pull away because I knew he was not a happy camper. He was mad. He was upset. He wanted to be king, did not want a queen. And eventually, we did find a place up in Northern California where we had her shipped. Actually, she was driven up there by a gentleman who came by and picked her up. I got a video of her running and playing and having a great time with all the other dogs that were up there. And Angus was here uh, having having a grand time all by himself. And of
Mhm.
course, my wife is constantly asking me as he gets older, we need to get a puppy. Angus, would you like a puppy? And I said, you've asked the right question because I don't think he would handle a puppy.
Mm.
Nah, because if he wants to be king, even at his age, you don't want to put a puppy in a situation like that. Now, if you did that, now you're generating a whole bunch of other energy with the puppy that you're going to have to deal with when the older dog is gone.
Mhm.
And I don't want to put another animal through that.
Mhm.
So now that was one of those instances where, again, I was not upset with him in the least. Another instance, we had another dog prior to Angus. His name was Connor. He was a barrel of a dog, a Chow Shepherd mix. And we were out in the yard. My dog Makushla and he were out in the yard playing. We were running. We were all running around, the three of us. And the next thing I know, Connor comes up from behind and knocks my right leg out from under me. And I fall on my back and it knocks the wind out of me.
Mhm.
I didn't get mad at him either because we were playing and that was his form of play. Now, thankfully, I wasn't hurt or injured in any way. Those are the kinds of situations, aren't they, where and unfortunately people have had this experience where the animal's in the house, they've been in all day, and you come home and they have, I don't know, torn up the couch, peed in the corner, done all kinds of stuff. And you really, now you got to clean all that up and figure out how you're going to discipline the dog. Well, am I correct? First of all, if you find all that stuff, it's too late to discipline, right?
Absolutely. And I love that you share your stories because every pet parent has such a unique story with their animal companions. And each of us have a different narrative, a different experience, a different dynamic. At the end of the day, this notion of disciplining is a little tough, right? Because of course we want to set loving boundaries, but odds are everything our animal companions are doing for us, they're communicating with us. They're drawing our attention to something in our lives, something different going on. And so that's where, to me, this book is so unique, this opportunity to share how to translate your pet's behavior. Because with every pet parent's story, they can tell the story, they can talk about, the dog destroying the couch while I'm gone, or having accidents, or not being welcoming to another pack member. And if they ascribe to this notion that our pets serve as mirrors and they're trying to tell me something, they might be like, that's great, but what are they trying to tell me?
Yeah.
And that's where this book comes into the picture. After working with thousands of pet parents and pet guardians, and being, Reiki practitioner since high school and a kind of observer of human behavior with a decade's worth of experience in advertising, what I was able to do is map out common pet behaviors with universal themes for humans. So
Mm,
it becomes a starting point, a jumping off point. So
mm,
if your animal companion is having those unwanted behaviors, if they're chewing on things, if they're destroying the couch, for example, while you're gone, or even in front of you, which happens a lot,
mhm,
of course, we want to understand the context, right? Anytime we're working with our animal companions, we need to make sure their basic needs are met. Are they healthy? Are they sick? Are they having a health issue? No, great. Then let's move on to training. Do they have enough exercise in their lives? Do they have enough mental stimulation? Are they bored? If we're doing the traditional training, we're giving them the mental stimulation, they're running around, check, check, check. Now we get to go into the energetic aspect. And what I've mapped out for, managing those unwanted behaviors, the barking, the nipping, the chewing, that kind of thing, the, tearing things up, to me, that usually has to do with themes of the human stepping into their power. Where are you not empowering yourself?
mm,
Where are there creative projects that you might be working on that you're not putting out because you're kind of have a little bit of that perfectionism going on in your life? Where are you, self-sabotaging a little bit? Because oftentimes those behaviors, if you're giving them the proper exercise, mental stimulation, and training, it's a frustration of come on, just get the show on the road, get your gifts out into the world, get talking, get doing, get producing, empower yourself to take action in this world, find your inspired spark. Um, with accidents, when our animal companions are having accidents around the house, dogs, cats, chicken, whatever they might be, it's important to consider context. Where are these accidents occurring? In the book, I write about the story of this cat called Merlin. And Merlin was having accidents in a very specific place, which was on the side of the bed where his pet parent's boyfriend was sleeping. And it was an interesting situation because, this pet parent, she was an extraordinary woman. And she was dating this guy who was, he seemed okay. And she saw all these red flags. And, but she was at that age where she wanted to settle down. She wanted to have a family. So she kind of convinced herself that, what, no one's perfect. It's fine, that we'll just move ahead. I've invested enough time, that old story. And the cat wasn't having it. It just kept having those accidents in the same spot in the bed where the boyfriend slept. Finally, we did a reading, and it came through that accidents have to do with red flags. What red flags are we ignoring? Where are we not seeing situations or relationships for what they truly are? So this was the cat's kind of opportunity to let the human know that, this is not okay. This is not the person. Don't settle. Sure enough, she kind of, faced the music, broke up with that person, very soon after found the love of her life, and they had a family. So this is where translating our pets' behaviors, whether it's on-leash reactivity, separation anxiety, the chewing, barking, nipping, benevolent leadership, right? Asking for that benevolent leadership, accidents, even moments of crisis. I've translated exactly what your pet is trying to tell you through these things. So you at least have a jumping off point. So no matter what your story is, what your experience is with your animal companion, you understand what themes they're pointing to in your life for you to re-examine. And this works not only if your animal companion is having trouble with their behavior. If they are the best dog on leash or the best, example of a welcoming dog, welcoming everyone into the pack, then we know that we can still look at those themes in our lives, see how they're serving us, where that success is, and parlay that momentum into other access areas of our lives. So guest reactivity, for example, or welcoming new pets into the pack, that tends to have to do with themes in the human's life of vulnerability. Who are you letting into your energy? Who are you letting into your home, into your heart, into your energy? Are you being discerning enough? Are you kind of trying to manage other people's emotional baggage versus kind of your own experience and managing your own energy? There's so much that we can dig into with the starting point of our animal companion's behavior.
My wife is and has always been, as long as I have known her, an empath.
Mm.
And she picks up on other people's stuff. And it took a long time for her to recognize that that's what was happening. The only issue is that we've never really found a way to keep her from or protect her from other people's energy, other than saying, hey, however you're feeling right now, it's not yours. It's not mine either, but it's not yours. And so you need to try to let that go. Recognize it isn't yours and let it go. And when she is in an upset state, Angus gets upset,
Yeah.
and he fusses and he carries on and so forth and so on. And it's because the two of them are, because he is her protector. That has been his main function. And of course, we have three doors on the house. Three doors. One goes out onto the enclosed porch with
Mm-hmm.
screening. The other one goes out into the backyard that's fenced, and the other one goes out into the front, which is not fenced. And he doesn't go out the front. But I will open up the porch door, and every so often he gets up from the rug that we have for him, and he will walk out onto the porch, look out there, and again, we live in the wilderness. We live in the forest area, and he'll bark. There's nothing out there, and he'll just bark. And she said, "Angus, come in here. Come in here." I said, "No, let him do his thing. He's on patrol. That's what he does. So let him bark. I know that you're saying it gives you a headache. Here, take some aspirin or something because you need to let him do this. If we don't have that door open, he goes to the back door where we have this, it's a ring on a chain that you can put up on the doorknob. It's an old timey lock. Okay.
Mhm.
And it's hanging there, and he'll hit it with his nose and say, I either want a cookie, which is 90% of the time, or I want to
Mhm.
go outside. If I close the porch door, he wants to go outside so he can bark, so he can patrol.
Mhm.
And even though and again, I hope he has a lot more years left in him. I mean, you're talking about 100 pounds and 12 years old. He may only have a few years left. I don't know. But that's what he does.
Mhm.
That's his job.
Mhm. I
Just like my first wife had a guide dog,
Mhm.
a black Labrador. This was her first guide dog, Labrador. The dog's name was Yora, Yora, Yora dog. Ha ha ha. We went for a walk in our neighborhood one morning, and we had crossed over the I-10. We were living in a trailer park, and the I-10, the highway, went right through the north of the trailer park. And we crossed in front of this one house that had a fence. Unfortunately, the gate wasn't closed. And out from the fence came racing two pit bulls,
Mhm.
and they attacked Yora. One of them grabbed her around the throat, and the other one grabbed her in the shoulder. And I, like a fool, got down on my hands and knees and I started pounding and trying to do everything I could to get the dog to release. Now, fortunately, the the flesh on her throat was the loose flesh on a Labrador. That's
Mhm.
all this dog got. Did not get any vital organs. And the shoulder, he was just clamped in. He didn't tear anything. Finally, someone came along and we were able to get them released. Well, the extraordinary experience was this: when when they lunged on her, she just sat down and didn't make a sound. It was as if she had left her body saying, you know what? It's not safe in here. I'm
Mhm.
out of here. I'll be back when it's safe.
Mhm.
Picked her up. We took her to the vet. They took care of her, and so on and so forth. Uh, and she was no worse the wear, both physically and personality.
Mhm.
Do
Mhm.
animals do that? I mean, in situations, why is it? Because I don't know that humans know to do that, to leave the body when there's great distress. Now, I don't know if maybe shock is the
Yeah.
leaving. I'm not sure. Talk
Yeah.
to us a little bit about that with
Yeah,
animals.
that's a beautiful observation. Just as we can learn a lot from our animal companions with on-leash reactivity, separation anxiety, accidents, we can learn a lot during moments of crisis. And that was a moment of crisis, right? So sweet Yora, in that moment, she modeled such beautiful calm energy. In that moment of crisis where she's being attacked, she was extremely calm. So she knew that she had to kind of settle down.
Mhm.
And animal companions, from all of the animal readings that I've done, the animal communication sessions, they have explained to me that they do leave their body. They can very easily leave their body and come back. Whether it's, those fearful moments, whether, they're going through a long-term illness and there's a little bit of pain and it gets uncomfortable, they can simply, the way that they explain it, step out. This also happens a lot if your animal companion had a tragic crossing over. A lot of pet parents are so upset, like, that must have been horrible for them. They simply step out. And the reason why they've explained to me that they're able to do that is, unlike humans, they're not attached to their bodies, right? As humans, we're so particular about who we are, what we look like, where the fat, is accumulating, how we're presenting. So we're incredibly attached to our bodies. They're not. They view it simply as a like shifting out shifting back in the same way we put on a sweater and overcoat. So they have that beautiful ability to step out, step back in when they need to.
Mm.
So it's interesting that you brought that up, because that's definitely been something they've shared with me in the past through animal communication sessions.
Now you are able to connect with animals if you were given a dog or a cat or what have you's name or what have you, the basic
Yeah.
whatever information you needed, you're able to actually tap in and give and find out where they're coming from. And by the way, that's how we found out about Angus kingship, to put it
Yeah.
mildly, was we had someone who actually was able to read him, and even my dog Makushla. Um, we took care of her for 14 months and she couldn't walk. But we took care of her for 14 months. Now,
Mm-hmm.
when this started in November of that particular year, I wanted to let her go then because
Mm-hmm.
we were putting diapers on her. We're putting pee pads. I'm taping a bunch of pee pads down on the floor, and then she lays there, and then she's wearing a diaper, and I give her the food and water there in her place. And my wife says, no, she still has so much love she wants to give. So we went through that for 14 months.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, my wife acquiesced. She says she's ready. And I said, okay.
Yeah.
And, and so I think that's another thing that we might want to talk about also is
Mm-hmm.
this the process of passage and knowing when the right time is. But I want to get back first. I don't want to forget that, but I want to get back first to this aspect of reading an animal and your connection in that regard.
Yeah, so those are two beautiful topics we can touch on. The first is animal communication, how that came about. As pet parents, I think so many of us are intuitive. We're highly empathic, we're highly sensitive, and also we're probably very intuitive even as young children, right? But then life happens, at least that was my case. I was very intuitive growing up. Life happened. I went to college, I had a job, it was very hectic, very busy. I kind of shut all that down, also because it felt a little overwhelming. When we're highly intuitive and empathic, it's exhausting sometimes to process all that information if we don't understand what's happening, how to control it, how to manage it. So I shut all that down during, my early adulthood. And then when I left advertising, I decided I should do something. Purina was one of the last accounts that I worked on. So I decided, you know what? I love talking about pets and the relationship of pets and humans. So I'm in New York City. I'm going to open a doggy daycare. And since growing up, I never had any pets of my own. I figured if I'm going to, open a doggy daycare, I should learn about pet behavior. And so that's where I got into dog training and learning the basics about, basic obedience and how to, communicate with our animal companions. And part of that course was doing, hands-on practicum hours working with pets and their pet parents. And I got to the point where when I would walk into a home, I started receiving these messages from the pets. Just I would kind of intuitively know what was going on in the human's life. And I started observing, wow, every time I'm getting called in for on leash reactivity, the human has something going on in their life where they've lost their footing. Either they're between jobs or they're between relationships. So I started taking these mental notes, or like with separation anxiety, every time that came in, it tend to be issues around the humans also, where they weren't managing their needs with other people's. They were over giving, over people pleasing. There wasn't a lot of balance in their lives. So through the animals, I started getting these intuitive hits. And that's when I started combining traditional training with animal communication. I started doing actual readings where I would just get a pet's name, like hop on the phone with their pet parents and say, who do you want to connect with? What are your questions? And different animal communicators get different sorts of information. Some get, I like this toy or this treat. Others get medical intuitive information. What tends to come through most strongly for me is what's going on in the human's life through the lens of the pet. Because when we understand our habits, our gifts, our abilities, we vibe higher and so can they. So that's the form
Mm.
of animal communication that really led to this whole process of translating your pet's behavior. And when it comes to those long goodbyes, right, our pets, our moments of crisis, the transitioning, that is such a powerful moment. And what I've learned both through the traditional training aspect of it all and then doing, hundreds of animal communication sessions is when our animal companions have a sudden goodbye, whether they ran away and we never found them again, or maybe we witnessed them leaving their bodies quite suddenly, or it's something that we didn't really expect to happen, that tends to be because our animal companions know we're ready to move on. We didn't need the long goodbye. When it is one of those situations with the long-term illness, with the, long goodbyes, as I call it, odds are there's an opportunity for attunement. And in those moments, our animal companions are helping us open up to our own gifts, whether it's dowsing, hands on healing, opening up to our communication with them, where we're able to sense their energy, sense how they're feeling, sense their presence, even if they're not fully vibrant. Because then when they transition to the other side, we can more easily communicate, sense them, feel them, hear them. So we tend to open up to our gifts or intuitive abilities because we're so desperately tuning in to how our animal companions are feeling in any given moment.
Mm. Well, I tell you, it is never easy, and quite honestly, I hope it never gets easy. Only because when it becomes easy, somehow you have lost the connection, the bond with that animal. And by the way, you mentioned a cat named Merlin.
Mhm.
We had a Mancoon cat named Merlin who was born in our home back in Phoenix, and that we brought with us here to Santa Barbara. And he was indeed a magician because there would be times, and by the way, at one point we had 9 cats.
Mhm.
um, we couldn't find him. And bear in mind, we live in a 2-room cottage. There aren't that many rooms. And we'd search everywhere in the closets and this place and that place and the other place and couldn't find him. And then all of a sudden, you'd turn around in the kitchen and there he was.
Mhm.
Like, where in the heck were you? Now, all of our cats have basically um, they have um, all passed naturally. Okay, Merlin, my wife was holding him. Now she worked in cardiology, so she has a stethoscope, and she takes that stethoscope and she checks and she thinks he's gone, and she checks and there's no heartbeat. And then all of the sudden, he comes alive again. He starts breathing. And it was only a few minutes later that then he finally departed. His eyes opened and he recognized us, and then a few minutes later he departed. And I said that was his final magic trick. And I have to tell you that it was funny, a little disturbing also, but in character, keeping in character with him. And my wife also was holding another one of our cats. Her name was Mella. The His name, I should say, was Mella, which is Gaelic for honey. And she was holding him, and at the moment of his passing, she could feel him go right through her, his
Mhm.
essence. Talk to us about this process. And again, there's not dealing per se with the grieving, because with Makushla, one of our cats, Tess, came over and nuzzled her. This was after she received the first of the 2 shots.
Mhm.
And even Angus came over. And remember, she raised him. So there was no problem with her being there because he came into her world. About this process of dealing with the animal who is going, and And also, one thing we did with the cats in particular was we had a box and we would put it up on the table. We knew the cats, other cats could reach, so they could pay their respects. Talk to us a little bit about maybe what I'm thinking of is more of the sort of the ceremony or the ritual, if you will, of the passing for the bonded to the animal.
Mm-hmm. So that's so beautiful. It's such a difficult moment, right? Even if we know that our energetic connection lives on as humans, we have so much love for our furry friends, for all of our little animal companions. And I think what you illustrate so beautifully is every passing is different. Every experience is different because every relationship, every personality of the pet is different, just as the humans. It's a very sacred moment. It's a moment that sometimes can ask for a lot of quietude. Sometimes it can be more of a celebration. But regardless, our animal companions understand other animal companions in the pack. They understand what's going on. And odds are they do come and pay their respects. They do kind of spend time with them. They do hold space. Also, by the way, our animal companions who have already transitioned oftentimes are energetically around them. Just as we hear as when we cross over, we're surrounded by loved ones from the other side. That
Hmm.
happens with our animal companions as well.
Hmm.
So transitions, goodbyes, there's a reverence in the air. Our animal companions get it, they sense it. Not only are they reading the room and the energy of what's going on, kind of they can see so much more than we can. They probably see a lot of the soul leaving the body, the other energies that are around. They understand the magnitude and they're also reading the room. They understand that this is a serious moment for us as well.
Mm.
Um, so they do support us in these moments, and there's a lot of sacred reverence in it for sure.
Mm. Would you talk to us about how you connect with the animals? And I'm going to ask this of you, but you can certainly decline if it's possible for you to, maybe it isn't, to tap into Angus, because my wife she's home now most of the time. She's being retired and thinking, I want a puppy. She keeps telling me, I want a puppy. I want a puppy. And I say, don't ask me, ask him.
Yeah, so I love that. So for me, animal communication is not what I expected it to be. Like so many of us, I thought it was going to be like Dr. Dolittle, like the movie where it's just you're hearing all these things. The way that the parallel I like to express about how animal communication happens for me is twofold. One is E.T. was the first movie I watched as a kid where I kind of understood. I'm like, oh, that's how I feel with animals. I just know what they're feeling because I feel it too. I pick up on it. So it's kind of that clairsentience, the like experiencing the same feelings. And then the second movie that I think did such a phenomenal job to explain how animal communication shows up for me is that movie with, I think her name is Amy Adams, called The Arrival, where those octopods kind of landed and they would just kind of deposit these little scenes and information and it would just come together as a message. Um, I think, in my experience working with pet parents, everybody has a lexicon with their animal companions that speaks to the way that they receive information. I love pop culture. I love movies. I love TV. I love songs. So oftentimes when I'm getting ready to go into a session with a pet parent, I'll check in with the animal and say, okay, what do I need to know going in? And they might give me a scene from a movie. So I have context
Mm.
about what the themes we're going to talk about. So that's how it shows up for me, but it shows up very differently for everyone, which I love.
Hmm.
Um, with your wife and Angus and the puppy, one of the things that's really interesting, you mentioned your wife is a cardiologist. She deals with the heart. And she's incredibly empathic and sensitive and open. So everything we've been talking about in regards to your wife has to do with the energy of the fourth chakra and the heart chakra.
Hmm.
And that's all about letting people into your energy, letting new people into your spaces, being discerning about who you let in and for what reason. So, when I connect in with Angus, it kind of flips the script on asking your wife the question, why do you want a puppy? Is it to mitigate the goodbye? Is it because you feel he's lonely and he needs a friend? Because if that's the case, let's look at that. Why do we think he's lonely? He's told you he's very content. So
Mm.
where do we see that in childhood? Did you always want a sibling? Or did you always want a pet? There's a bigger trend that we want to kind of flip back and ask, if that's our impression of Angus, where can we trace that back in our own lives and start there?
Hmm.
Because I would agree that Angus is not looking for an extra pack member. I don't feel he'd be particularly welcome, but it seems like something that she's wanting to fill a space or to, add more nurturing, add more love, whatever it might be. We kind of turn it back on that question for the human.
Yeah. Yeah. And I told her that now when Connor passed, and a matter of fact, his passing anniversary is coming up on the 29th of August. When he passed, Makushla was by herself. Now,
Mhm.
she'd been with dogs from the time we got her in Phoenix back in 1999, I think. And we moved here in 2006. I wanted to give her some time to be the solo, to be the focal point for us. And so we waited until uh, January of the following year. And we found a breeder who we went out to Santa Paula, and we found Angus. We found the puppy we wanted, and we were able to pick him up once he was 8 weeks old, and we actually received him on the 14th of February, which was rather
Oh,
auspicious.
yeah.
And when we brought him home, we put him in the backyard with Makushla. Now the dogs are indoor, by the way. They're not outdoor, especially where we live. But we put him outside with Makushla, and he started running around and staying close to her, and she did her thing to getting you sniffing him and smelling and so forth. And the first experience he had with ice, it was very cold that day, and the water bowl that we have outside had frozen over, and he went over to lick it. And the moment he licked it, he jumped back and he started shivering. And so we grabbed him up and took him in the house and bundled him up because we knew he was cold. And it was the one and only time he ever peed in the house. He peed in the bed. And
Mhm.
again, we weren't upset because we knew number one, it's new for him. He was scared. And number two, he was scared because he just experienced something he'd never experienced before.
Yeah.
But Makushla got along with him just fine.
Mhm.
And she raised him and so forth. And he became a soccer dog. I got a soccer ball for him once, and it was not fully inflated, so he could grab it with his mouth. And he would run around the yard with this thing in his mouth. And then he started to roll it towards me, so I'd kick it across the yard. He'd chase it and he'd bring it back, or he started nosing it, using his nose.
Mhm.
I have videos up on my website of the first, I'm going to say, first 5 or 6 months of his growing and the play out in the yard with tennis ball. I would buy like those big containers of tennis balls
Mhm.
and throw them around the yard, and he'd chase them. He'd chase them with one in his mouth. It wasn't like he was going to pick it up and bring it back to me. He was just going to chase it.
Yeah,
I s-
and that's such a beautiful illustration of how our animal companions can play different roles to different people in the pack,
Mm,
right? You, Angus, is, there's that playful aspect, that partner that, let's play soccer, let's,
yeah,
have a catch, throw a ball together. With your wife, he's more the protector of her heart and
right.
her energy and her
Mhm.
space. So,
Well,
I think it's so beautiful, especially when we're talking the context of, a pack where we have multiple humans, multiple pets. They're not one trick ponies. They have
right.
this amazing dimension to play different roles for different people in the pack.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you too that I misinterpreted the play. I said, "Oh yeah," I was talking with this other gal who is also a connected, intuitive with animals, and I says, "Oh yeah, it's great. He'll want to go outside so he can get his exercise." And she says, "That's not why he's doing it. He's doing it so you will get your exercise." And and like now I had to laugh. I'm going, "Oh, okay. That's nice that he's looking out for me."
Love
So,
that. And our animal companions truly do, right? We think of ourselves as their guardians, but they're kind of our keepers as well.
yeah.
I think especially nowadays, as we've grown, as we've evolved as pet parents, as we've understand the role of our animal companions, we understand that it's not, that parent baby relationship. It's almost that relationship of equals. And
Yeah.
sometimes I would even argue they're a lot more aware of what we need and what's going on than we are of what they need. So in my, practice, in my philosophies, it's all about taking the lead from our animal companions. And that helps us understand that their behavior isn't just them naughty or, acting out. We're moving beyond that, going from naughty and nice to understanding that if I'm a conscious participant in understanding my pet's behavior,
Mhm.
man, can I transform in amazing ways in my life and relationships and my career. We learned so much from our animal companions that apply in every area of our lives.
Yeah, it's incredible. I'm curious as to how many animals you have had, if you've ever kept track, and how many you've had at one time.
So here's the irony. I'm a dog trainer who has never had a dog of my own. Growing up, I grew up in São Paulo, Brazil, and grew up in an apartment building, so it wasn't very conducive for any traditional pet. We didn't have dogs, cats, anything. So for me, growing up, it was more about the insects, caterpillars from downstairs, or finding, cocoons that would turn into butterflies, or maybe having fish. So for me, I grew up with a lot of non-traditional pets, which helped me understand that we can learn and connect with animals even beyond the traditional ones that we love and hold so near. And then in my professional career, it was really interesting because as an adult, I needed to learn everything from the ground up about working with our pets, our animal companions. I didn't come in with any assumptions. So although I'm so fortunate and blessed to have so many, pets around me all the time, we have family pets. I'm the aunt to a very sweet dog named Birdie, who just, you might have heard her little collar go off right there, walking into the doorway. I don't have any of my own because if I had a dog, he'd be in doggy daycare all day. So.
Oh, yeah, I understand. I do. I know that fortunately, with the dogs that we've had over the years, while we both would go to work, our dogs would be, I want to say, actually, it was safe enough for them at the time for them to be out in the backyard. We had it fenced in. We made sure it was secure. Matter of fact, when we moved here, there was another dog that was part of a Siberian Husky pack of four, and he was the final member of the four that we brought with us from Phoenix. And when I built a dog run for them to put a structure, a doghouse in the middle of it, he was constantly digging and trying to find ways to get out. And I kept telling him, Chemo, which is his name, I said, you need to cut that out. And my wife says, no, actually, you need to tell him to keep doing that so that you can find the weak spots in the run to keep him from escaping. And so it was quite an experience with him. Makushla was there when he passed. She was there when Connor passed. So she was familiar with that process. And I know that I know because of I've had the experience, and I know you do too, that when you have multiple animals in your home, well, as you referred to the pack, you need to let the other animals in number one uh, experience, or at least be around the animal after they've passed. And then, of course, if they exhibit certain behaviors that are out of the norm, it's because they're grieving too. They miss the animal. Kit Kat, who is our last cat, after her partner, her female partner, Tess, who was a tuxedo kitty, passed away, and I laid her to rest out under a giant pine tree, which is where I've laid to rest most all of our animals. Ben is the name of the tree, and we thank Ben for caring for them as we nourish him as well. Um, she would wander the house looking for him for a few days. It's because she missed him, missed her, even though she came over to see her after she had expired. So it's really important, and I think that the same thing is true for humans. I wish that I could have been there when my father passed. He was in Phoenix at the time, and so my sister, she texted me when they were at the mortuary prior to his cremation, and I asked her to do me a favor, which she did, and then the picture was taken while she was doing the favor for me. I gave him a kiss on the forehead and told him I loved him, and I've been around individuals who were in the process, but not who departed. We had a friend who lived in our home for a short time. He actually, I say he passed away in our home, but actually they resuscitated him to the extent that they got his heart going again, but he never regained consciousness. And then they ended up removing life support so they could harvest his organs. Um, my grandmother passed away in our home when I was very young, the day after Thanksgiving. So I did see that aspect of it, the aftermath. But I know there are people who, like in hospice, who are right there at the moment of transition. So I have been there, of course, for our animals, and it's an extraordinary experience to be a part of. It really is. It's not morbid. It's like, well, you're there when a child is born, comes out of the womb through the vaginal canal and so forth. Well, why aren't you there? And by the way, there was an interesting fact someone shared with me about breathing, and I look at this from the symmetry aspect. Did you know that throughout our entire lives, from the time we get here until the time we leave, the number of inhales and exhales is exactly the same? Because when you come in, you inhale and you
Mm,
cry and so forth. But when you pass, that last breath of air comes out. Now
mm.
it's a weird thing to think about, but I mean, I thought that's because I'm all into symmetry. I'm all
Yeah.
into uniformity in that regard.
Yeah, no, there's something cyclical and beautiful. And I think, at the end of the day, whether it's a loved one that's human, whether it's a loved one that's furry, we love them. They've been
Yeah,
an important part of our life. And, we always walk away with beautiful lessons, whether from our human counterparts, our furry counterparts. And when we kind of are more mindful about living with, connecting, and training our animal companions, we can truly maximize each moment, each,
yeah,
nuzzle, each bark, to really maximize not only understanding them and our relationship, but ourselves. And
yeah.
that's the beauty of being human, right? We get to have these deep
Yeah.
relationships.
Let me ask you one more question in regards to animals and dogs in particular, and that is the aspect of them. Uh, I don't want to say suffering, but let's just say they're in pain. There's some distress there. Is it true that a dog, in addition to maybe whimpering and so forth, tends to pant if they are, and it's not always the case, but if they're experiencing some kind of distress, maybe a thorn in the foot or something like that, that they will just kind of stand or sit there or lay there and just pant,
hmm
Is,
I'm not a vet, so I can't speak with full authority, but anecdotally, yes, I've definitely seen the panting. Panting can also be a sign of stress as
hmm,
well. So if you're walking your dog outside on leash and they're a little nervous or anxious, that panting can be more than, oh my gosh, it's just hot outside. It can
and
be
yeah, or
anxiety.
if it's 40 degrees.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, panting, we always want to understand signs of stress in our pets. Early signs of stress can be yawning, licking their lips, panting a little bit. And the one that throws a lot of people off is a hard tail wag. Not all tail wags are happy. If it's hard like a windshield wiper,
Hmm.
hard and fast, that's a sign of stress. And all of those are signs of, I'm going to need some help because this is might devolve into barking, lunging, or kind of, the fight, flight, freeze
Yeah.
reaction. So it's a sign that they're about to have big emotions and they're looking to your guidance for help.
I know that when Angus goes over to ring that bell, so to speak, at the door for a cookie or to go out,
Mhm.
if he doesn't want to go out, he'll back away from the door, even though he needs to for me to open it. And if he yawns, I close the door
Mhm.
because his yawning tells me I don't really want to go outside. What I want is a cookie. It's like, I just gave you a cookie. That's not what we're doing. We're not, I might as well just fill your food bowl with cookies,
They would
and they're,
love that, I'm sure. I'm
and
sure.
quite honestly, I would hope maybe somebody has developed a dog food with
Mm.
cookie shaped pieces, because
Yeah.
I
I
have to
mean,
look for, I'll have to look for that somewhere. I want
having
to, go ahead.
in having worked on Purina accounts and advertising, we've seen all sorts of, pet foods and hearts. I love the little treats that are like little hearts, little biscuits. And they're always marketed and geared towards that beautiful desire that we as pet parents have to, how do you say, to treat our pets, to show them our love through food, just like we do other humans. So rest assured, there's definitely something like that out in the market.
To pamper and spoil.
There
All
we go.
right. And he is definitely that, but I don't have
Mm-hmm.
a problem with that. And here's the reason why, because I would only have a problem with it if he was putting on excessive weight,
Mm-hmm.
and he's not. So if he wants a cookie and I'm in the mood to give him a cookie at that particular moment, what the heck? It's not going to kill him. It's not going to hurt him. And we love him and we take care of him. And even when he's fussing on the floor at night when we're trying to go to sleep and he's kind of giving that high pitched bark kind of thing, I get down on the floor with him and I rub his face, I rub his jowls, I rub the back of his head, and I just say, hey, it's okay. You're doing fine. Everything's okay. I know it's hard, walking and so forth, but you're doing great. And we're here for you, just to reassure him with the voice. He may not understand the exact words, but it's the tone of voice. And I know that
That's
my
right.
wife,
Energy never lies.
yeah,
So
my
they
wife has often said too, when I'm disciplining him, don't yell at him. I said, I'm not yelling. I'm being stern. And there is a difference. There's a big difference
Mhm.
when you're doing that. And I know a lot of dog owners, especially, they actually do. They yell at the dog. And don't yell,
Mhm.
because now the dog thinks you're mad at him or her.
Yeah.
And that, I don't, it doesn't sever the bond necessarily, but it doesn't do much for the dog's psyche.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's important that we all, the same way you talk about rolling on the floor and letting, Angus know all is well. Odds are we should do more of that for ourselves, more of that kind of showing that same compassion for ourselves. And when it comes to, working with our animal companions and setting up boundaries, they really help us understand our own leadership style. Because if
Mm,
for your wife, for example, even talking sternly feels inauthentic to her, feels
mhm,
aggressive,
mhm.
I work with so many couples where, the husband has one, methodology, and then as women, a lot of times we try to mimic that, especially given old school dog training where people were like, it's all about dominance and being loud and assertive. That doesn't work. And it's actually not, one size fits all. So it's
Right.
about us finding ways that we can be firm, but still loving, caring, kind, and authentic.
Yeah.
That's the truth of it. We need to find our authenticity.
Absolutely. Denise Mange is my guest. We are talking about translating your pet's behavior and learning what their behavior says about you to train smarter, not harder. Go to petprana.com. We will be linked to that website so that you can find out more about Denise and the work that she does and get a copy of the book. That's petprana, PETPRANA.com. I have three final questions that I would like to ask you, that I ask all of my guests. And I thank you so much for giving us so much time here on the program. Before I do, though, I'm going to thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We're here Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m. for our special edition of Tell Me Your Story, and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m. We hope that you will tune in to all nine, or choose some of them, because it's nine different guests, nine different conversations, nine different topics. And we hope that you will tune in during those times as we stream at those times at richarddugan.com. However, the podcasts are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, We're also on YouTube where you can watch these interviews. We hope you'll subscribe and click notifications so that when I do post these interviews, you will know about it and you will be able to tune in and listen and be educated as well as I hope inspired and maybe a little entertained. We also hope that maybe you can help us out financially. We certainly would appreciate it. We have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask to whom are you sending, send it to richard@richarddugan.com. That's richard@richarddugan.com. And finally, and I know that Denise, you probably do this on a regular basis, we ask people to take time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, and go within and listen to that still small voice. With all of that being said, the first of our three questions: who is Denise Mange?
A pet groupie, undoubtedly.
I love it. Well, you can't answer this question the way others have. What gets you up in the morning?
When I'm lucky, licks from a dog that I'm dog sitting or hanging with, but truly is the opportunity to talk about pets and the role they play in our lives. I went through a lot of my life where, getting up and doing my job was drudgery. I was hoping that I could sleep more, rest more. Now getting up and working with pets and pet parents, I'm always enthusiastic and ready for the day and grateful.
Hmm. And finally, what was your best day?
Mm. Wow, that is quite a question. I think the best day was the day that I was downloaded or I kind of wrote out this process of translating your pet's behavior because that's when I realized this is what I was born to do.
Ah, well, thank you so much for the time that you've given us here on the program, for the work that you are doing, and the support that you are giving pet owners all over the place, not just the United States, but I'm sure around the world, because I'm sure that you're utilizing the technologies just as we are to spread the word, and we'll continue to spread the word. And thank you again.
Thank you so much for hosting me. It's been a pleasure.
And I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. Until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to Lal. Jeanette, I am listening. Dad, continue to be happy because I am. Smokey, I'll see you on the other side. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.